Welcome back to the Blitz Crosstalk. I'm Brianna Dix, joined by G-Bag Nation co-host and former NFL scout Brian Broaddus. Brian, how are you doing this Thursday morning?
You know, it's funny. You assured me they were going to win that football game last week. You had all this.
I think everyone
had all
assured you
this-
they were going to win this football
You
game.
had all that great analysis, and I was buying it. I just hope that people continue to watch us because of our analysis. But that was I can't say shocking, Ray. I can say though, if you don't play well enough in certain positions, stuff like that happens to you in NFL. That was a rough weekend for a lot of teams. Buffalo and Jacksonville, people like that. You know, some teams that were double-digit favorites took it on the chin. So if you're not ready to play week to week in the NFL, that's what happens to you.
Any given Sunday, right?
Any given Sunday.
When you went back and reviewed film from Week 9 against the Broncos, what to you stood out as the biggest glaring issue? Be it, the inaccurate throws, the drop passes, the offensive line blocking up front, missed tackles, inability to set the edge. What
You can
what
stop
stood
now.
out to
You
you?
can stop now.
Right.
You can stop now. Yeah, no, I think, Bree, and I know you watched the game too, and so I'm interested to hear your opinion as well. The one thing that we know about this football team is that Dan Quinn and these coaches have done a really good job of putting players in position to make plays. Now, have they had their most talented players on the field all the time? No, they've lost some guys because of injuries. They haven't used that as an excuse. But what happens to them defensively is that they get exposed, whether that's in the running game. We've seen Diggs give up passes. We've seen them give up chunk yard passing plays. But what happens is they usually play this game ahead. They usually are ahead. So it's one of those things where the offense has done such a great job of building leads and then sustaining drives so they don't get exposed. And them having to play 40 minutes in that game the other day that's a disaster. That's a disaster for any NFL team, but it's especially a disaster for this team. And I felt like, though, that as I watched the game, as you and I were in the press box there, and you just kind of got that feeling that they kept going three and out. And my biggest fear was we did the show when we were talking about the Viking game, and I worried about Cooper Rush. I worried about Cooper Rush coming in and going three and out, and all of a sudden Kirk Cousins and Jefferson and the running game and all that stuff from Minnesota. But they held Minnesota in check because they were able to Cooper Rush was able to get first downs. He was able to sustain drives, and it kept that defense in that football game. But, it was so funny. Very early in that football game, I want to say it was like 7:30 left in the first. It was like Denver was thinking, we're going to maybe be in a shootout today. We're throwing the ball, and they have like negative 18 yards of offense basically in two drives. I mean, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, they hand the ball off on a 2nd and 13 and they get like 11, with Williams. And then you're like, whoa. And then the next play, they get another 20. And it was like Pat Shurmur, the play caller for Denver, goes, wow, I can run the ball on these guys today. And so that turned into, that's why I think where your nightmare started, because all of a sudden it became, we don't have to throw. Our defense has got us 2 straight stops on 4th down, and now we can run the football. I can protect Bridgewater. I can protect the offense. And they did a great job. I mean, they hammered the Cowboys in that running game. So to answer your question, I'm sorry, it was just a long answer. But
You were good.
But that's kind of how I thought things were going along. And, maybe, I don't know, maybe you saw it a little bit a different way. But I just think like when this team gets exposed defensively, it's because of the problems with their offense. And it hadn't happened much. It hadn't happened much. We haven't seen this Cowboy offense get shut down to the point where it wasn't able to throw with any success. They weren't able to protect with any. And I don't think you could totally just blame everything on the position switch from Steele from right tackle.
Right.
Even though he had his troubles, I just kind of feel like Dak wasn't great. The receivers weren't great. They didn't block great. I mean,
It was everything.
It was everything. And there was just, I can't tell you how many times in my life I've seen block punts. I rarely see block punts go forward. I always see block punts. Cowboys blocked a punt earlier this year, and they were able to block it right there, get the ball, and that was a huge play. I mean, that was the start of the third quarter, second half. Mm-hmm. You get a 3-and-out, a block punt, and now the ball potentially on the 19-yard line with a 16-0 game. That could have just completely switched the game over. Instead, they go back on the field defense and they give up points.
Well, and that's what it was, right? Like consistent plays like that were the microcosm. Micah Parsons would get a sack on third down.
Yeah.
Or then you'd have Jordan Lewis gets an interception. Well, then guess what? Penalty.
Defensive holding.
Yeah. And it's like that was a constant story that came along. And I think one of the narratives that's really followed this team, like you said, but was with the defense that they were too reliant on turnovers, right? And I think for Trayvon Diggs specifically, this offense has been so explosive throughout the rest of the season. Right. Teams were having to come from behind. Right. Quarterbacks were having to press. And so I think Diggs, several of his interceptions have come second half of games. But, what do you think kind of with that? I mean, do you think they've been too reliant on the turnovers, and maybe now do you see some of these issues being a trend, or do you think that was more of an anomaly in that?
Yeah, that was, we talked about it last week, though, the Broncos. The one thing that we were kind of worried about is they had two really quality backs with Gordon and Williams running the football.
Right.
And so that, did you think that Denver was going to be able to stop you to the point where you weren't able to move the ball? That's the thing I think that, and you start talking about turnovers and things like that. You're right. Turnovers happen. They had one right before the half. Literally, Jordan Lewis, perfect position. Bridgewater makes a mistake, and boom, interception. And then on the other side, Diggs gets called for defensive holding for no reason. I mean, there's no reason for him other than being lazy on the play, grabbing the receiver as the receiver was coming inside. It's inexcusable. So those are the kinds of things that I think that I do worry about what's going to happen in the running game. I do worry about, we'll get into the Falcons this week about that. I do worry about somebody once again, and I'm surprised more teams haven't just tried it. I'm surprised, the teams that they played, like the Eagles. I mean, the Giants wanted to run, but Saquon Barkley got hurt. Right. I think Denver was forced into running because, like I said, I do believe they thought they were going to have to be in a shootout and they were going to have to throw the ball. And what happened by running the ball and getting 180 yards between two backs, that's 180 yards less that Teddy Bridgewater had to get in that football game. I think other people are going to see that. Now, are you good enough on defense to stop the Cowboys and make them one-dimensional throwing the football? And, throwing the football with the Cowboys usually is pretty good, and they usually score points. But those drops were huge. Mm-hmm. Dak being inaccurate was huge. The pressure was bad. There was just a lot. I mean, I think Kellen Moore, play calling, going for it on fourth down, when should you have kicked? Yeah. I mean, you love the aggressiveness, but you're now roughly around 35% going for it on fourth down. There's going to be a point in time where going for it on fourth down isn't always the right thing to do. If you're at that 60, 70% at hitting those fourth and ones, boom, go for all of them. You're at 30, 35%, you might want to send in a kicker and maybe get some points out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move into this week. Week 10 face the Atlanta Falcons.
Are they week 10?
I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, maybe other than
last weekend, right.
But I wanted to hit on a couple of Matt Ryan's mismatched weapons. So this week we have Cordero Patterson, Kyle Pitts. So when you look at, I know, it's been honestly really exciting looking at Patterson because he's a guy. I mean, you heard everything about Kyle Pitts throughout the pre-draft process coming out. I mean, generational talent. I mean, you've heard everything with him. But with Patterson, I mean, this guy can do it all. I mean, Micah told me yesterday, this guy's a unicorn like me. I mean, he can play three positions.
Like me,
I mean, he can play three positions.
He can.
I mean, running back. It's like the zone runs, the reverses, and then as a receiving threat, the sting routes can stretch the field vertically, and then nightmare as a return specialist. Yeah. And then you've got Pitts, who, can cook guys in press coverage, massive catch radius. What do you think the Cowboys can do to slow
you got me scared.
These guys down on Sunday?
You got me scared. And everything you said is absolutely right. And that the thing was, Pitt's coming out. We work on the draft. I know on 105.3, we work on the draft. We do the draft show, all that stuff. And Pitts was my top rated player in the entire draft. And just for all the reasons that you talked about, the catch radius, the length, the speed, the upfield ability. I mean, what they're going to ask him to do is the Falcons are playing him more in line. And when I mean in line, next to the tackles, closer to the tackles, because what they're trying to do now is they're worried by playing him wide so much that he gets corners. Corners can carry him instead of if you put him closer in line on the line of scrimmage or near in bunch formations and stuff by the tackle, then linebackers or safeties have to take it. So that turns into a huge mismatch because you want to, I mean, this is a game where you might consider walking Diggs over him and saying, listen, he's big, you're big, battle, and go to it and hope you don't get three pass interference penalties or defensive holding. The thing with Patterson is fascinating, and it was really a coach on the staff that was Patterson really developed this ability as a running back while he was in Chicago. And there's a coach on the Atlanta staff that came in and said, listen, in Chicago, we used him this way. We started handing him the football, and because we were banged up and we needed somebody, and he's capable, he's big, he's tough, he's physical, he finishes, he catches the ball well. Everything you said about him is absolutely true. And, that's the problem. Dallas did not handle the physical running backs last week. They tried to strip the ball, punch the ball, whatever. It's great to try, but you don't need three guys doing that. One guy tackle, the other two punch. And that's what they've got to figure out with. But with Patterson, I mean, he is going to, like you said, he's going to take the ball. He's going to press the edge. If you don't handle the edge very well, which they didn't do last week, those ends were getting crushed at the point of attack. And now that ball's going downhill on the corner. He is going to get to the corner, and he's going to turn the corner, and he is going to be a headache for somebody to tackle in the secondary. I mean, he is that type of back. I know it was like last week, it was 10 carries for 11 yards or whatever, but where he killed the Saints was they threw him the football for 126 yards. Yeah. Up the field, underneath, threw him screens. I mean, there was just, if he's not going to beat you running the ball, he's going to catch the ball. And then if he doesn't do those two things, if you kick off to him and you don't knock it out of the end zone, he is going to take the ball 4 yards deep in the end zone, and he's going to bring it up the field. This guy returns kicks. He runs. I mean, he is an incredible player, just and a great one to have. We talk about Michael Parsons and the unicorns and stuff like that. That's what this guy really, really is. And nobody's ever used him the right way. And the Falcons, and even if you talk to the Falcons guys about it, the scouts, they're shocked at how it's worked out for him, but they're so grateful that it has worked out for him that way. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think Mike McCarthy had a little bit of that when he had Ty Montgomery. Kind of tried to use him in multiple, multifaceted guys.
This guy's a more physical runner, more of a. I mean, don't let the number 84 fool you when they hand him the ball. That is you could put 26 on him, 21, 20, whatever number you want to put on him, and he would look just like an NFL running back carrying the football.
Have you ever scouted a player
like
that
this?
Was able to, like Patterson.
Wow, that's a great question.
Has had that success in multiple spots.
And not with the physicality that he plays with. Not with the ability to catch the football and not with the ability to return kicks. And, you get some of that. You get some of that with Tony Pollard, but not that you don't get the size. Yeah. I mean, we go down on the field before the game and like you and I are watching running back warm-up drills. You're going to go, oh my, okay.
That's a scary guy.
Yeah, I see that. Like Pollard's a smaller kind of a slider guy. But Pollard can return kicks. We saw it last week. We saw him catch the football. We saw him also drop a football. But running, explosive. It's hard to find a guy that has that kind of power and skill and all that in size, all in one package. A tremendous football player.
Well, Arthur Smith uses a lot of pre-snap motion.
Yes, he does.
The Cowboys had issues with eye discipline last week
Oh,
on defense.
yeah.
What are some of the challenges that presents? to
Yeah,
defense?
that is, and you're right. And what happens though to you though, Brie, a little bit is that when you're struggling to stop a team, when they're like running the ball and it's 2nd and 4 and it's 2nd and 3 and now you're on your heels a little bit and the coaches are scrambling to try and get personnel on the field that can match what the opponent is doing. Denver did a great job of just continually mixing run, pass, run, pass, run, pass. Dallas never got. And so what happens is you're thinking, God, I got to play the run. Oh, I got to play the pass. I got to play the run. Got to play the pass. Run, pass, run. And, so now it's like that's where miscommunication, because coaches are just, now they're gambling. Now Dan Quinn's like, okay, I've got to send the house, or I've got to do something. I can't let them just continually dictate what's going on. And when that happens is you have a lot of on and off the field. You have tired players, you lose focus, and you lose communication aspects there. And maybe you have a little bit of a young guy too, in like a Micah Parsons that's not seen everything, and now he's frustrated and he's yelling, and Keanu Neal's yelling, and the defensive line is looking, what's the call? Stop yelling. And and not lining up. And that's your problem right there. When teams can hammer you that way, communication becomes a huge issue.
Yeah. Well, and Dan Quinn specifically touched on that after the Broncos, was saying you had a misfit. Another guy should be hauling ass, his words, to get there, and it wasn't happening. And he said, disappointing. Yeah. But looking at the Falcons defense this year under Dean Pease, uses kind of the multiple looks, disguises. But I think he's a guy that likes to attack through the middle. Yeah. Bringing linebackers up.
You're right.
Penetration through the A gaps.
Right.
What do you think they're going to try to do against this Cowboys? Now, obviously, last week, uncharacteristic performance for the number one offense in the league. But what do you think he's going to try and do to limit this?
I'll tell you what. If I'm Dean Pease, I'm trying to. if they're going to play Terrence Steele, which you've reported yesterday during practice that the configuration is Steele same as the Broncos, and if the Cowboys are going to be cavalier enough to not give him help, we've seen what happens to a bad left tackle against the Atlanta Falcons. We've seen that, and if you remember Chaz Green, we've seen bad things happen.
We all have nightmares.
We have had nightmares about that. But that's what I'm saying. I think that you're right about the way they like to attack is they like to double A gap blitzes and stuff like that. So you'll see two linebackers walk up, attack the double A. That'll test Connor Williams. That will test Biotish. You don't so much worry about Zach Martin in that situation. But those three inside guys have got to handle the double A gap blitz. What happens when you double A gap blitz is you have to single block. Everybody then becomes almost across the board like have to pick up men by themselves. Okay. So they're forcing you to have to one-on-one block on the outside. And so me personally, I think they're going to have to go back to the game plan that they did against the Chargers in week 2.
Okay.
And that was with Joey Bosa playing on the outside. And not that the Falcons have great pass rushers. I mean, we'll see Dante Fowler. He's coming back from an injured knee, and he's been on injured reserve. Does he play this week? We'll have to see. He could be really, really, really rusty in that. But I'm just saying, though, to me, I would be very mindful of what's going to happen on my left side with Terrence Steele. But I almost want to say they have to have the same game plan they had against the Chargers when they handled Joey Bosa on the right side. You just can't let Steele block 65 plays. Well, last week it was 57 plays. But 65 plays, you can't let him block one-on-one for 65 straight plays. You have to have a plan over there. Help him. Is it chipping? Is it lining up wing over there? Is it lining up inline tight end? Is it making that defensive end or linebacker over there have to go a little bit of a further route around? So, Steele admitted he just thought it was he didn't think it was easy, but he's played left tackle before. He played left tackle in college.
When he did it all preseason long and, did both and throughout training camp.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's disappointing is that, that they had a lot of faith in him. They still do. They still do. It just kind of went back to what we had seen from Steele before with some of the problems with the footwork, the balance, the punch, things like that you need to be successful at offensive tackle. He really, really struggled with in that game.
Well, and I mean, full week of practice, we will see a different result this week.
Well, hopefully help. Hopefully help. I just don't, you just can't leave him over there and expect it. Oh, everything's going to be fine. There are times at right tackle in the season that they've left him over there and he has been fine. So I get why they want to do it, but I also understand that he's playing a position he hasn't played yet this season. Well, in the regular season. He had some reps over there, and like I say, in training camp that we saw preseason wasn't always great. But man, I mean, they're just doing everything in their power to buy Tyron Smith another week of rest. Because what's going to happen is we're going to come on here and talk, and it's going to be okay. Well, here we got Kansas City. Oh, and tomorrow we've got the Raiders coming in. I mean, it happens that quick, and they're trying to get Tyron Smith ready for those two games within 5 days of each other.
Yeah. And I think part of the thing with Steele, too, is when he was on the right, you had Zach Martin next to you that kind of could take some of the slack. And now against the Broncos, you had Connor Williams, and obviously Connor Williams is no Zach Martin.
Right.
So that is something in and of itself as well, in addition to
it is very calming as a tackle to know that if I get beat inside, that there's an all pro right guard there to clean up the mess. I mean, he might be blocking his guy and blocking your guy at the same time.
Oh yeah, he shoves two guys to the second level.
Exactly.
Beast.
Crazy.
All right, well, Brian, thank you.
Thank you
so much. Yes, and stay tuned next week for more of the Blitz Crosstalk.